Range anxiety may be fairly new to the automotive lexicon, but it's something that all new electric vehicle owners think about, at least at first. Is there enough juice to get me from A to B? With that in mind, I decided to embark on a long-term test of this Kia Soul EV. In the process, I learned to live electric.
The differences between the Soul EV and its gas-powered counterpart are subtle. The EV arrives with unique colours and a different grille. It hides the charge point. Size-wise, very little changes. There is less rear seat foot space, but that's about it. The more meaningful difference is found in the curb weight. The EV is 200 kilograms heavier than its gas-powered sibling because of the main 27 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery. It adds 282 kilograms.
Aside from the use of some recycled materials, the cabin of this EV is all Soul. There was one thing I did learn to appreciate. When you're planning a trip, you punch it into the nav. It then shows you how far you can drive before you need to think about recharging the battery. When that time does arrive, you simply push another button, it brings up all of the local charging stations, you pick it, the nav takes you there, and it really does help to eliminate that range anxiety.
The Soul's electric motor, which drives the front wheels through a single-speed transmission, puts out 109 horsepower and 210 pound-feet of torque. This is enough to whisk the EV from rest to 100k in 11.4 seconds. Now that is slower than the gas-powered model, but as the torque arrives the instant the wheels begin to turn, the pull off the line was noticeably crisper. It also cruises the highway with equal aplomb.
Now this EV has a number of different modes. There's drive and brake, and you can use eco with both of those different driving modes. Now the temptation is to stick it into drive and away you go, but that's not good for driving range. The best setting is brake with eco on. That way this car becomes a one-pedal drive because it ramps up the amount of regen braking. That in turn extends the driving range. There's an old saying, you can always get 5 litres of gas off a tow truck. They can't bring you a bucket of electrons, at least not yet.
To find out how far the Soul EV would go on a near-freezing day, I drove a mix of highway, urban streets and city roads. While I would have liked colder temperatures, the day started off at 5C and 127 kilometres showing in the range meter. At the end of the test, I'd clocked 54.3 kilometres on the highway. The rest was either city or urban. Setting out, I was hoping to pull 120 kilometres of driving out of the battery. At the end of the test, I'd driven 145.4 kilometres and still had 17k showing as my distance to empty. That was better than I expected given the need to keep warm and the fact the headlights were on.
Perhaps the most important lesson I learned was to precondition the cabin while I was recharging the battery overnight. That way, when you get into the car in the morning and you head out, the cabin is already up to temperature, so you're only using the battery to maintain the temperature. On a -15 day, if you head out without preconditioning, well, getting the cabin up to temperature, it really does have a big effect on driving range.
As with the rest of the EV's makeup, the ride and handling characteristics do not stray too far from those of the gas-powered Soul. The suspension does an equally good job of soaking up road irregularities and controlling unwanted body motion. The only caveat is the additional mass means the initial turn-in, well, it felt slightly sluggish towards the limit. The steering itself is crisp and the feedback better than many similar electrically assisted systems. All in all, most drivers would be very hard-pressed to pick up on the differences between the electric and gasoline versions of the Soul.
You know, I managed to squeeze almost 162 kilometres out of this Soul EV and at temperatures near freezing. If you factor in that there's really no other compromise, this has to be one of the best electrified vehicles on the road.